Dr. Kimberly, it says that we're live. Uh-oh.
Come on, y'all, it's time.
Let's go. Come on, it's time.
Yeah. We're rolling on the road with the doc. Rolling on the road
With Dave.
rolling on the road
With the doc.
100 days of diversibility with Dave and Dr. Burton.
Yeah,
all right, let's go.
And look at there. That's what happens after 3 years. You are rolling on the road with Dr. Kimberly and Dave.
We have a theme song.
And that came from one of our top viewers out of Atlanta, Georgia.
I like it.
All right.
I said
Awesome.
I was like, that is so us, because he always says, hey, Dr. Kimberly, we're live. And then for her to come in and say, come on, guys, it's time. We got to, let's just, that's so us.
That's why it's our theme.
It is so us. Oh, we got comments already.
Uh-oh.
And there she is.
Oh, I got it. Now that I know how to turn the comments on, I can turn the comments on. Pat, thank you so much from the GA.
She is tuning in all the way from Georgia.
Nice.
I am excited. This is kind of one of those bittersweet shows for me. I said I was going to be emotional. I am pulling on my inner strength. I was trying to explain to her that we talked about how to build your inner strength, and then we spent some time on how to maintain it. And today we're going to use our inner strength to make some end-of-life decisions. And we're going to make a decision before it's time for the decision to be made. As many of you know, on April 28th of this year, I had to make a decision because I get a phone call at 5:06 a.m. I will never forget that, from Gift of Life, Michigan, saying, hey, we got a phone call from the medical examiner saying that your husband qualifies to be a donor. I said, well, my husband's not a donor. And then they said, well, you know what? This is just a little bit different. It's called tissue donor. And I was like, yeah. I said, do you realize that he just died? I'm not ready to make that type of decision. How much time do I have? And I was told I had until about 11:30, maybe 11:45, because it was time sensitive. And I went to the VA. I sat with my primary care as well as my therapist. And we all had the discussion, and they said, make the phone call. You'll appreciate it if you do. I'm glad that I did. Oh, what's going on there? Something. Oh, okay. I just kicked myself out. Can you still see
you're
me?
here, Doctor. You're
No,
here.
we see you.
Oh, okay. My screen. See, that's what happens when you have a touch screen. There you go. Oh, yep. She said she's glad that we like our theme song. I told her.
How else would we do but love it? I see you.
And so I am so glad that I did it. I really, really am. Art Prize starts here on the 14th of, drum roll, please.
This very week.
Yes. And
Are you mute? Oh, there you are.
There we go.
I wasn't saying anything. I was just waiting for you guys to kind of look. And so this is my Art Prize piece. It tells about our journey to the donation. And I thought that was really good. The title, Dying to Give Life. It's a bit of an oxymoron.
It's a beautiful piece. And, it's really been such a a privilege meeting you, Dr. Kimberly, and having you share your story about your journey with this. And I'm so touched about how you've turned your experience into this beautiful work of art. It's a beautiful way to honor your husband. And it's a wonderful way to raise awareness about kind of what you were saying, something that a lot of people don't really think about, don't really want to think about, and aren't prepared to maybe answer a question like that when they receive a call at the worst time of their life. You know what I mean? And so I want to say thank you for all the attention that you are bringing to this and the education that you're doing to help people understand more about the importance of conversations around this and how these gifts help people. Look at all the ways that you have listed here that your husband's gifts of tissue helped heal other people and improve their lives.
It was a total of 80. When I got the slip back, it was unbelievable. Just unbelievable. And for you, those that don't know, when you're not reading the scroll, this is Miss Alison, and she is the Senior Community Relations Coordinator for Gift of Life Michigan. And there's the QR code on there takes you to a video on YouTube that I actually did with Racha, who also, what's her position?
She's our director of marketing at Gift of Life.
Yeah, so we did this video kind of off the cuff, as I always do, Dave.
It doesn't seem off the cuff at all, though. I mean, it is like, it's beautiful, if I say so myself. I'm a little, but I think your work, just for something being off the cuff, the words that came to you and your message was amazing.
It was, I guess I should say, impromptu. It was very impromptu. There was a Gift of Life donation event at John Ball Park Zoo. I think it was August 17th. And to see a half a mile of all of these donors and recipients, there were more than 900 people that were in attendance. And to be in a space where you could just allow your emotions to come and no one, there was just nobody to micromanage it. And you could just be in your space. And I got ready to leave. And I said, there is no way that I could not just start the conversation. It's only like about a 6-minute video, if that. And it's on the 100 Shades YouTube channel that our program comes on. And she videotaped. I asked her, I said, would you please videotape me? She says, oh, absolutely. And I just talked about my experience, what it felt to go that half mile to look at all of the people. And I think what hit me the most was to see a baby. I couldn't imagine being the parents of a 2-month-old baby and making the decision to give life, to make that donation. And that's definitely where you pull on your inner strength to make a decision like that and to be able to bless so many. I can only imagine how many would bless when I look at 80 people for my husband, and to know that 2 people who were blind received their sight, and that my father had been blind for more than 30 years. And that was always the running joke that nothing that $1 million and a new pair of eyes wouldn't do me. And my husband would always say, sir, if I didn't need my eyes, I would give them to you. And so for him to be able to do that was just amazing to me.
Yeah. So who is this Gift of Life Michigan? And how do we, as Dr. Kimberly said, it was what at the last moment or just past the last moment, she had to make the decision. But what are you all up to?
Yeah, well, and again, thank you for having me on, first and foremost.
Oh,
Appreciate you
absolutely.
having me here today. It's a privilege to be a part of this. I know you guys are doing amazing work with your show, and so thank you so much. So, Gift of Life Michigan, not a lot of people have really heard of our organization, but maybe more people are familiar with, say, when they go to the Secretary of State and they're there to get a driver's license and they say, do you want to add your name to the Michigan organ donor? Oh, look at that.
I got my prop. I can't
See?
screen save, but
I couldn't have orchestrated that better. Perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So a lot of people know that. They know, like, okay, when I get my license, they ask me if I want to join the organ donor registry. So Gift of Life, we work with the Secretary of State. That's one of the things we do. We manage that organ donor registry with the Secretary of State. But so we're a nonprofit organization, but we have a pretty big responsibility. We've been designated by the federal government to recover organs and tissues for transplant here in the state of Michigan. So we're the only organization that can do that. And we work with all the hospitals in the state. And basically, they notify us when they have a patient in their care that meets certain criteria to be an organ or tissue donor. And from there, it's our job to check the donor registry to see if a person had, joined the registry while they were alive, made that decision to document, their decision to be an organ and tissue donor. If someone's not on the registry, we would then reach out to their family members to have some conversations with them and ask if they would give permission for their loved one to be a donor, as Dr. Kimberly is familiar with how that works. And so, it's a great responsibility. We work with the families. We work with people like Dr. Kimberly, pretty much at the worst time of their life. And now we're coming in and asking for their permission for their loved one to give the gift of life and healing and sight. And so, it's an interesting situation to be in. We come alongside families in the worst moments of their lives. And you want to talk about drawing on inner strength, like you said, Dr. Kimberly. These are people that now have experienced great tragedy. They've lost a loved one, yet somehow they're still thinking about other people and helping other people through their grief. And it's just an honor. It's a privilege to be able to do this work. We don't take it lightly. Also, there are over 2,400 people right now in Michigan waiting for life-saving organ transplants. Millions of people receive that healing tissue every year. And so there's a huge need out there. And we can't do the work that we do without people like Dr. Kimberly, donor families, those donors who make those gifts possible.
I think what was interesting, though, I guess I didn't understand that he was not, it doesn't happen here. It happens in Ann Arbor. And so they walk you through every piece of the way. So they ask you some the Emmy asked me some questions, but he didn't say what it was about. It was just maybe a couple of hours later, I get this phone call, and Gift of Life, they have a person that just walks you all the way through the process, from their lifestyle, things that they did. And the part that I love the most is that there's nothing wasted in you. So if you drank, if you smoked, had high blood pressure, diabetic, you can still give. That's the part that I love, is that you can still give. And so the first thing that I said when they called me and they said surgery went well, and I was like, what? And they were like, yep, you authorized us on Friday, and we got him. He's here. He had surgery. Everything went well. We just wanted to let you know. And now we just need your permission to transport him back and take him to the funeral home. And I said, wow. And my first reaction was, I can't wait to do a show about this. And they were flabbergasted. And they said, one lady said, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I've never heard anybody say within a few hours of us saying that we just harvested their family's body that, oh, well, I'm going to do a show about this and I'm going to become your spokesperson and I'm going to travel and I'm going to tell the whole world about what just happened. They're like, are you real? Are you okay? Do we need to call somebody? Do you need medication? Are you all right? I said, no, this is just what I do. I said, my name is Dr. Kimberly Barrington, and we got this show. It's called Rolling on the Road. And I said, I am the CEO of 100 Shades of Diversibility, where we improve the quality of life. I said, for persons, legislatively, economically, through community partnerships and education. I said, you're going to be my community partner, and we're going to do education about this. I said, wait till I tell Dave, and they're just like, and, there's just like this dead silence on the phone. And they're like, is this real? Are you okay? They just kept saying, are you okay? Trust me, I am. This is just what I do. And I said, I always like to look at, okay, now what can we do? How can we educate? And who else needs to know about this?
I love that that's how you think, like how can we help educate other people? How can we, share information so that maybe other people can benefit or be prepared, in a situation? Because these things come up. And like you said, it's not really something you plan on. It's not really a conversation you plan on having. So I appreciate what's so amazing about you is, you have a very, not only do you have this platform, but you just have a really beautiful way of sharing your personal experience and your inner strength. And I think that really comes through, and it's really impactful.
We have Artie Franklin, Janice Tyler, Sandra, and Shayna are all watching. So we want to say thank you so much. She says hello. I guess we need to go over and see who's over here on our comments.
Has been letting us know that, yeah, she definitely agrees with it. And it is life-changing on both ends of the perspective, as Dr. Kimberly has said, on her side, supporting Stan and his final gift of himself. So before we dive into that more, Alison, can you give us what are the nuts and bolts of this? You talked about Secretary of State. I showed my license. Sometimes you call people like Dr. Kimberly. How does all this work?
Yeah. So really, if when we talk about organ and tissue donation, we really say it all starts with somebody making the decision to be an organ and tissue donor. Joining the organ donor registry is the best way to legally document that you want to be a donor. You can do that through the Secretary of State when you're in there, or you can go online very easily and do it. GOLM.org, you see that scrolling across the bottom of your screen there. You can register to be a donor in like 30 seconds. Basically, it's that easy. And one of the things we like to tell people is, okay, so now you've done that. Have a conversation with your family. Let them know you did that. Let them know why this is important to you, so that if something should ever happen to you, your family knows what you would want and they can feel comfortable making those types of decisions on your behalf. And really from there, organ donation is pretty rare. Not a lot of people actually end up being able to be donors. A lot more people do end up donating gifts of tissue and corneas to restore sight. And so we're kind of like the liaison between hospitals and the donor families, those patients that are waiting for those gifts of organ and tissue. And so it's our responsibility to work really closely. We work around the clock. We have employees statewide.
Yes, they do.
We do. Unfortunately, Dr. Kimberly knows that all too well. But Yeah, we this doesn't take a break, right? There's a constant need for these gifts, and there's families being faced with losing their loved ones and going through that process. So we notify hospitals when an organ donor is a potential match with a patient that they have on their waiting list. We keep a vial of blood on hand, actually, in our lab for all the patients on the waiting list for an organ transplant in Michigan. So that way, when we do have somebody that comes up as an organ donor, we can take a blood sample from that individual. And in our lab, they do all this amazing work behind the scenes to make sure that transplants are going to be compatible, safe. And then, we reach out to those transplant centers, and then they in turn would make a decision about whether or not they think an organ would be a good fit for their patient. And that's kind of how the process works. So we play that important role of being the liaison, making those gifts available. And tissue, as Dr. Kimberly has been talking about, sometimes people can donate up to 125 gifts of tissue. I mean, think about 80 people that her husband was able to help. So tissue is commonly used in surgical procedures. It can be life-saving for people who've been severely burned. It can prevent people from having to have their limbs amputated in the case of bone cancer. So there's just a wide variety of uses for tissue, all that really helps people heal and can really improve their life in some cases. And of course, you talk about corneas too. We work with Eversight, that's the eye bank in Michigan, to recover corneas to help restore sight for people who've lost their sight due to either like a diseased or damaged cornea. So there's a huge impact that one person can make. 8 life-saving organs that can be donated, and between 75 and 125 tissues to help people. And we just really try to educate people about the need. We have, like I was saying earlier, 2,400 people in Michigan that need an organ transplant right now, but unfortunately, we just don't have enough organs available for everybody that needs one. We don't have enough donors. So it takes people like you, Dave, and Dr. Kimberly, just educating about this, about the need, how the process works. People just don't know a lot about it, and you don't really think about it unless it impacts your life directly,
Well, one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that we touched on today is some of the myths that are associated with being an organ donor. And the first one is, I don't want to be an organ donor because if I get into an accident, they're not going to save my life. They're going to see that I'm a donor and they're going to kill me.
I think that's probably the number one myth out there. You hear that all the time. And you know what? I don't know that Hollywood, movies, social media, I don't think they do any favors for us in perpetuating that myth. They don't always portray things accurately in movies. And there's a lot of...
But here, shameless plug at Rolling on the Road, we tell the truth. And so we are always a good source. If you want to get something out and you want the world to know, you just come in and you come on our show.
See, that's what I'm talking about. We need people like you to disseminate the correct information and the truth, how it really works, right? So, but it is what you just talked about, Dr. Kimberly. If I had $1 for every time I heard that, a lot of people think that. And maybe that's all maybe you saw something on social media and you believe that, right? So it just takes a little bit of education about how the organ donation process really works. And I respect the fact too that there is a lot of mistrust of the medical system. And so, okay, if that's, where some people are coming from, we do say, doctors and first responders, they're going to do everything they can to save your life. Maybe you don't totally buy into that. So what I can tell you is organ donation, organ and tissue donation, it is not medically possible unless everything has been done to save somebody's life. The process of what needs to happen, first responders, doctors, they would have had to do every possible thing that they can to save a life. When all life-saving measures fail and there's nothing else that can be done for a person, then organ donation is medically possible. Because there's organs, I mean, we could really get into the science of this, but what it boils down to is organs and tissues have to be properly cared for, oxygenated, if they're going to be gifted to somebody else to save their life. And if that's not done, if somebody just lets you die somewhere, your organs and tissues die immediately too. They can't be donated. And so it's just not possible if things worked the way that they do in that myth. We wouldn't be recovering organs for transplant because they couldn't be transplanted. So that's kind of what I have to say about that one. I mean, I always feel like donor families are our best advocates in this regard because they can speak to their own experiences.
And I wear my pin I've worn it every single day since they came in the mail.
Oh, I love that.
Every single day. So all of my clothes, I put them in the day before, or a week's worth of things that I know I'm going to go out, over the next few days. I put the pin on so I don't have to worry about it. And then I always keep an extra in my purse in case, oh, did I forget? Okay, there's one in my purse.
I love that.
It always starts the conversation. And when people hear the 80 persons, they're just like, oh my gosh. And I'll say, think about how many times you've needed a fistula. How many people in your family weren't able to dialyze anymore because, their fistula didn't work anymore. Can you imagine if some arteries and veins were donated to you so that you can continue to do dialysis? And they're like, oh, yeah. And then even with what I did the video, and I really didn't make a big deal about it, but just in the last couple of days, I've really pushed the one that I did with Racha, and it's got 100 views just when I started pushing it, I want to say 2 days ago. Boom, 100 views. So now I'm going to make it public and put it on here after we do the show. And I think that's what got the conversations going with a lot of friends and family when I said, you guys need to really rethink this. And to see someone say, hey, how would it make you feel if you knew that your loved one had 72 hours to live unless they received a donation? Would you rethink that? Shana says, the life of someone that has passed away is still living and helping someone else along the way.
Yes.
And she said, this is a great show today. Great information. Very informative.
Aww.
To get, I don't know, I got statistical questions in my brain.
Yeah.
You said, so there's 2,400 people waiting for an organ in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an estimate on how many people die each year who aren't donors? Like how, or maybe positively, of the number of people who die in Michigan each year, how many are donors?
So the statistic about I can give you a percentage of how many people actually are able to become organ donors every year. It's usually, and we're speaking nationally, it kind of boils down the same in Michigan. It's usually about 1% of the population that meets that criteria. 1%. Yeah. So there's a little bit of different criteria for organ and tissue donation. So what a lot of people don't know is that, in order for someone to be an organ donor, that individual has to be on a ventilator in a hospital when they pass away. Yep. It's the only way that organ donation can be considered. With tissue donation, we don't have the requirement for the ventilator. So a lot more people then meet that criteria when they pass away. So that's kind of how it works for cornea and tissue donation, but it's just,
But that's
it's
within
rare
12
to,
hours, though.
yes. Yeah. There's
Still
a time
within 12
window.
So
hours.
there is a time frame
Mhm.
for that. So they have to
Yep.
get it within, they really want it less than 12 hours. They want it closer to maybe about 10. But they, for people who might procrastinate like me.
Give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
You were going through a
Grace,
trauma.
grace. So, I mean, and again, because we are talking about dying, we
Yes.
get these, so you saw I have my red heart on my license, but what if some tragic accident occurred? I'm driving in Montana. This is Gift of Life, Michigan.
Yeah. Great question. So one of the things about the donor registry is that it's sort of, it applies wherever you go. For example, if you made the decision to join the organ donor registry in Michigan, but something happens to you in the state of Montana, if first responders or if you're in the hospital there, they've done everything they can to try to save your life, and all life-saving measures fail, you have the opportunity to be a donor. If they have found your license and they know that you live in Michigan, they will contact us in Michigan and ask us to check our donor registry to see if you are a registered organ donor in our state. If you are, then they will honor your decision to be a donor, and your organs would be recovered in Montana. Organs or tissues recovered in Montana.
Because so if, and again, not to be too morbid of it, but so tragic accident, I'm put on a ventilator in Montana. They get a hold of your organization. Everything's on the up and up. Dave wants to donate his organs, but not going to help somebody in Montana instead of somebody in Michigan? Or do they fly my organs back to Michigan?
You are going to help someone that lives within a certain area where the organs can be transported. And that's how organ donation works.
Okay, so that's one of the things that we see on television is that someone dies in New York and they're in California, and they fly the organs on a helicopter over to California from New York.
Put on a bag of ice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, okay, so I'm only laughing because we do a lot of presentations to high school students. We have like a special program for that, and we always talk about this kind of stuff. So organs, some of the things they do on TV are accurate. There's a little bit more state-of-the-art ways to transport organs now, but typically in the past, organs would be flushed, cleaned, packaged on ice, and put in a cooler for transport. Now we're kind of using new technologies for that, but that's another conversation for another day. Organs can only be viable outside of the body for a short period of time without a blood supply, right? Organs need oxygen to survive, and they need a blood supply to stay viable. And without that, the tissues start to die and the organ won't be viable to be transplanted. So for example, if you're talking about a heart, we only have really about 4 hours from the time that the heart is cut off from the blood supply of the donor until it needs to be in the recipient, connected to that person's blood supply. So if you are going to be a heart donor in Montana, we might not logistically have the time to fly the heart back to Michigan. The heart is going to go to the patient in greatest need that also is within the area that you can make it to within 4 hours, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So we always have to be cognizant of, like, how far can you travel with an organ that you're still going to be within the window of time that it's viable to be transplanted. So that is one of the things that's taken into account. Now, tissues, they might help people all over the United States, because tissue does not have that immediate window. It's true, yes, that it has to be recovered from a donor in a certain amount of time. Usually max of 24 hours. But tissue, once it's recovered and processed for transplant, it can be stored for a year or more. It depends on what it is. Some of it's refrigerated, some of it can be stored at room temperature. And so you don't have that immediate like turnaround in which it needs to be transplanted. And so it can go and help individuals all over the United States. So
if Dave is an organ donor, but doesn't say that he's a tissue donor, does he have to say organ and tissue?
Great question. That's another thing we like to educate people about. So you hear it, we refer to it as, okay, join the Michigan Organ Donor Registry. That's like the official name for it. And that's likely what they use at the Secretary of State. But it actually, even though we call it the Organ Donor Registry, it applies to organs, tissues, and corneas. So if you are somebody that you make the decision, you want to be an organ donor organ or tissue donor after you pass away, if you add your name to that registry, it's understood that you're agreeing to donate your organs, tissues, and corneas. Now, we meet a lot of people who are like, I'd like to donate my organs and my tissues, but I don't want to donate my eyes, or I want to donate my tissues, but I just don't want to donate my heart. They might have a reason why they
don't want to donate my body.
Yeah.
Some medical student. That's the only box I don't check. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll check the box, but
yeah. Well, and that's a whole other
everything
thing.
you need, but don't let me lay around for students to poke around.
So that would be whole body donation.
Right.
And that is covered. That's not covered on the Organ Donor Registry. Totally different thing. But so it's a little bit complicated. Unfortunately, it's not a little bit more straightforward in our state. But in Michigan, it's just a yes or no. Do you want to join the donor registry? If you say yes, then you're agreeing to donate your organs, corneas, and tissues. Now, however, if you say you want to put some stipulations on that, and there's something you don't want to donate, what we tell people to do is to write. It can be as simple as writing a note. You can type it, write it out, sign it, date it, include in there this, I want to be a donor, but I don't want to donate this. Either hold on to it or give it to somebody that would have those important documents should something like this ever happen. So whoever that person is in your life, maybe you want it to stay with them. And they would need to know to present that at the time of your death if you have the option to be a donor. And that is considered legally binding. So you can designate, but you got to write your own note out stating what you would want to donate. Otherwise, if we don't have that, we are going to recover what organs and tissues can be used for transplant, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So Ms. James says, thanks for educating us more and more. You are so welcome. Please let us know where you're tuning in from, Ms. James. That looks like a new viewer.
Well, that brings up my question. If you don't know, Alison, we're like in 50 states and 10 or 12 countries. Now, we're not going to worry about the countries, but what about those 49 other states? It's like, this is Gift of Life, Michigan. And somebody in Montana says, I wish we had one of these in Montana, because that sounds like I'd want to donate my organs and tissue in Montana, but I got to be in Michigan.
Oh, we have the ways for people all over the United States to join the Organ Donor Registry. So in Michigan, you've got Gift of Life. We facilitate donation here. You can sign up in our state. Every state has a donor registry. You just need to do, and unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head which organization handles that for the state of Montana. I bet a simple Google search would help you figure that out. Or there is a national registry, and that can be found at donatelife.net. So that is overseen by Donate Life America. And I don't know if I probably don't have the ability to type in the chat, but
Donate Life Montana
so-
for our viewers in Montana.
Yes, or the National Registry, donatelife.net. We'll get you there too.
Donate.
Yep.
Oh, donate.
Donatelife.net.
Did I get this right?
And it
I
has
think
the
I just
same
missed it.
logo. They stole your logo.
So here's a fun fact.
They stole your
Donate
logo.
Life is the
catching
brand
them.
of organ and tissue donation. No, Donate Life is the brand of organ and tissue donation. So boy, we could do like lots of different shows if people really want to know all the ins and outs of this. But Donate Life is sort of the national brand. All the organizations like Gift of Life Michigan work in tandem with Donate Life to educate people about organ and tissue donation.
Did you type it in, Dave? Or you're just looking it up?
I did not. I'm
Yeah,
looking it up. So
do I have the
Okay.
ability to type it in the
you
chat?
make me join the chat, but it won't let me.
Okay, so I'm
I don't know. How
getting ready
connect.
to write it in the thing. It says donate. Ready? Donate.
I
It's
put it
called
in the
Okay, I'm gonna look over here in the chat.
donatelife.net. And I don't think I have the ability to type it in the comments, so I apologize
There
about
is
that.
Donor National Donate Life Registry.
Yes, that is what we're talking about. So
That's the
my bad,
registry.
Dr. Kimberly. Sorry, I should have given you that link too.
Okay, there we go. I'm pasting and click show. There we go.
Awesome.
Wait a minute.
So,
There we go. Boom,
yes.
boom. You see it come up?
Yep. Perfect. I see it. So that is, anybody can join that registry. And that is, so when somebody passes away and they meet the criteria to be an organ or tissue donor, what we're going to do at Gift of Life is our staff, and our staff only, the hospital staff, they don't have access to this information. Our staff, we will check the Michigan Organ Donor Registry, and we're also going to check, we have access to the Donate Life America Registry. So we're going to check that as well.
Okay, what was the other one that you told me? It was www.
So you've got the National Registry, that's at donatelife.net. You can access that there.
Mhm.
And then you've got Gift of Life's website scrolling across the bottom of the screen, which is, that one's golm.org. So if you're in Michigan, you can sign up on golm.org. You're anywhere else, you can sign up at donatelife.net. Add yourself to the National Registry. Every state checks that.
Okay.
So that's a sure way to get yourself registered to be an organ donor. It's very easy to do.
She said yes.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that.
Electa Queen says, thank you so much for educating us. She appreciates the education as well.
Thanks for bringing the education to everybody.
And she's here. She actually was on last week, and her topic last week was self-care is not being selfish.
Amen. I need someone to remind me of that every single day. We don't do enough of that, do we?
We don't.
Some of us anyway, right?
Here we go.
Too many of us.
Yep.
She says, thanks so much, guys. You are welcome.
Pat, you need to tell all your friends in Georgia. Lifelink of Georgia. That's the organization like Gift of Life down there.
Okay.
There's some wonderful people down there.
So far we have 2 states here. We have Maryland and Georgia. But everybody can come through the...
Yeah, everybody can use that donatelife.net.
Yeah, so anybody can go there and you put your information in and you're on the National Registry. But does each state have one of you, doing the outreach, doing the education, and having that relationship with hospitals?
Yep, absolutely. So Gift of Life is what in our world is called an organ procurement organization. And actually, it's all designated by the government. The government kind of
You got to
oversees
change your
that.
title there, Allison. That just sounds so creepy. Organ procurement.
Well, that's why I usually don't refer to it as such.
Gift of
We
life.
just say gift of life. We recover organs and tissues for transplant. But so that's what it's known as in officially.
Official generic title.
We just say OPO, but nobody knows. If you don't know what that is, then
those
it means nothing to you. Right. So OPO, there are 57 OPOs in the U.S. So some states, Michigan has one. We're the sole organization for Michigan. But some states have 4. Like our friends in Ohio have 4 organizations like Gift of Life doing this work.
Really?
Other states have just 1. Yeah, so it just depends how the
California
government
would have 4.
Yeah.
California has multiple. Yep. But they have 1 donor registry. But multiple organizations, facilitating the donation process. Yeah, they got a lot of people over there. So they have a lot of people that
I just want you guys to know that it is 4:45 p.m.
Wow.
So if anybody needs to go, but it's amazing how quickly time goes when you're having such a good time, a good conversation. So we can go longer if your time permits, but if not, it is now it's 4:46.
My time permits. If you have any other questions you're wondering about, I'm happy to answer them.
And I'm gonna invite folks, who watch this after it's live, throw your additional questions in the chat. We'll get them to Allison. She's already alluded to it a few times that we definitely need a part 2 for this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
See, we were already working on it back in behind stage in the green room.
Yeah,
we were saying who else from the organization needs to come, and can they come next week?
Yeah, I'm just checking. We're gonna work that out.
Even if Alison wants to come back and do a part 2, that would just be wonderful.
Sure.
Because one of the things that we can do, they said awesome, is finding out the other states. One of the things that we did, I want to say, Dave, it's been 3 years ago now. We went around the state of Michigan, and then we went outside of Michigan and hit maybe about 5 or 6 states talking about, oh boy, like a disability advocates, Centers for Independent Living, so that those folks, especially when we were in the heat of the pandemic, knew exactly where to go, how to get some outreach, how to get some help. And so if there's other organizations and there's someone, Alison in Montana, since he wants to bring up Montana, and I already know why he did that, but maybe because he might be out there glamping or something, hanging out, visiting kids or something, and might get
Georgia's nice too, Pat. Don't get me wrong. Georgia's nice too. You can start the Appalachian Trail in Georgia and start walking north or rolling north.
That's right. Yes.
There.
I'm going to be like, hey.
But I mean, and the challenge is, this is where we started today's conversation, is that these are tough issues, but by golly, folks, they're real issues.
They are.
When you have these conversations with your family, your loved ones. I just had the conversation a couple of weeks ago with a real good friend of a real good friend about patient advocate designation, because when somebody's in intensive care, it's almost too late. Again, it's not too late. As Dr. Kimberly, again, this story of her, the Gift of Life folks reaching out and helping her make the decision, because it still ultimately was her decision. And I know I'm gonna say this. I don't surmise this. I know this, that if Gift of Life was high pressure sales, Dr. Kimberly would have hung up the phone and that would have been it, because Dr. Kimberly doesn't do high pressured sales,
Nor do
that
I.
that it was a gentle, loving container to have a very tough conversation to make these decisions. So you got to have these tough decisions about end of life so people know your wishes, so they know to act on your wishes. And so yeah, I mean, that's going to be my plug. Have these conversations. I mean, Alison said it a couple times. You become a donor and tell your family, because if you don't
And you
tell
wear your
them,
pin.
wear your pin.
Yes.
And what is so interesting is you don't necessarily want to say you're the one who's influencing that, but here it was. I made this decision at a difficult time, and unfortunately, because we did the tissue donation, he was not able to be embalmed, so he had to be cremated, which is fine because he didn't want to be buried anyway, but he didn't want to tell me that he wanted to be cremated. He's just like, I don't know that I want to be in the ground, by myself. I don't want to be in that. So I still had to make that decision as well, and kind of read between the lines of what he wanted and didn't want. But he came home from cremation on May 18th, which was a Thursday, and I had a heart attack that day. And I was in the hospital the next day when we had a tragedy in the family, and my 2-year-old great nephew had shot himself in the head. And here it is, they're calling me on the cardiac wing of the hospital. What do we need to do? This is what's going on. I love U of M. They sent their whole team in and said, you may do this one thing and we'll help you walk through it. Because, they had medication, they had the cardiologist, they had the whole team, because we don't need another episode of you having another heart attack. And this will just really exacerbate things to have to deal with this. But you do what you do, because I know this is what it is that you do. So to walk them through, the baby was on life support, and they asked to do a donation and to walk them through. And I said, yes, that's what you need to do.
Wow.
It's like, I just did this, and glad that I did, because now they have an example of it and know that I'm going to be there with you. You can make this decision.
Wow. That's a lot of tragedy to go through in such a short amount of time. And again, talk about inner strength, drawing on that. Just, how you were able to handle yourself and be there for others and make those decisions. And wow, that's very admirable. I know you were in a tough position, going through your own health issue too at the same time. My goodness. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because it's people sharing their personal experiences. And I think what I loved about that video that you made at the zoo was it was just so real. It was just so authentic and so heartfelt. And it really, you just said such great things that I think really make people think and will really impact people. So I appreciate you. There's a lot to be said about when you're thinking about others, when you're going through all that of your own. It's pretty amazing.
I want to say hey to Dr. Donna Walton. She's watching, and she's in Washington, D.C. Hey, Dr. Donna. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I can't even say, oh, it's what we do, because it's not. The average person would not find themselves in a situation such as that, to lose their spouse tragically and then to funeralize them, have a heart attack while it hasn't even been 24 hours, you're still in the hospital, and you get a phone call saying, hey, and I'm watching the news that said, 2-year-old shot himself in the head. I'm not thinking anything. I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And of course, the nurses immediately come in there, cut the television off. You don't need to watch anything like that. And it's like, okay. And then the phone rings, and it was my family. And I said, well, I got to walk them through this. And part of it was there were some other legalities with it. And so I had to make some phone calls to some, folks and agencies and kind of work some things through. So the donation piece was just a part of what needed to happen. And when I look at that, I don't know who that was. I don't know who she was, that was doing that. But I do know that just in everybody within that family unit all said, hey, we're going to go down and we're going to change our license and we're going to become donors, because that's the least that we can do. And if you can make that decision and 80 people were helped, wow, my life won't seem like my living has been in vain. And I think that was what has been the clincher for everyone, is that 80 people. And you said up to 125. And I'm just thinking like, okay, is there anything left? Is anybody else, did anybody else need something? But I think that's the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Is when you think that my life really hasn't had value. And I can tell you there are 10 people that I've been counseling that said, when you said that to me, I found a place where I could have value. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm going to live my life, but I'm going to go and I'm going to sign those papers. I'm going to say yes, because I don't see myself doing anything of great importance. But can you please can you write mine up? Can you write mine? Can you write this for me? When you read it, where it says that his final gift of community service and, giving, because that's what we do, as an advocate, you give so much of yourself. And Dave knows. Dave is one of those persons that it doesn't surprise me that he's a giver, a donor. It doesn't surprise me at all. He gives his hair. Normally his hair comes down to like about here.
It's coming back.
And he grows it so that he can donate it. I keep saying, like, one of those times I'm going to get it so I can just go, what? We're rolling on the road. Just Dr. Kimberly. And we're really like this because, you know what? I've got Dave's hair. Oh, my God.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to save the rest of my questions because holy mackerel. I don't know what time's the real time. Well, that's just the live clicker because we're getting to the hour mark, Dr. Kimberly.
Are we there?
Keep rolling.
We are there.
Alrighty. So we want to say thank you so much. It is now 5:00, almost there, straight up 5:00. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay just a little bit longer because I'm going to pull the video so that no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let you watch it on your own time, but I'm going to post it as soon as we finish the show because many said that it was very touching for them and they needed that kind of like a private moment to be able to view it because it definitely makes you think. It's all in 6 minutes. And it was unrehearsed. It was just, I looked around, I saw the people. And one of the things that bothered me the most that I said to Miss Allison was, out of all of these people, all of the pictures, I could count on one hand the people of color. I was so disappointed
Mm-hmm.
on
Yep.
both ends, for the agency and as well as, for us. And so we have made this commitment that we're going to get it out there. And I said, we're going to start with a show. I did the video. And then, of course, I did the art piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, think of all the people that are going to see that too.
And actually what happens, the QR code takes you to YouTube to that video at the Gift of Life event. So I'm really excited about that. And the piece is not just, oh, okay, put something on a paper. All of it was done by artificial intelligence. So I submitted, real pictures, and then it took a minute to kind of get the right ones because they got a little, as Dave would say, a little wonky. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, that looks weird. And so I finally found the right ones, and even putting in my words. So it created a background, it created the pictures, it created the words for me. And everybody's into that the artificial intelligence, the avatars. So art needs to, imitate life, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where everybody is moving into this new age of intelligence. So
Yeah.
it's not just having an easel and a paintbrush and some colors. And actually, some of the things that came back were extremely colorful. So I'm excited, but just to be able to tell the story, and the piece that I love about it the most, when you look at it, it says, I had high blood pressure, I had, COPD, I had asthma, I had type 2 diabetes. He died from a heart attack because he had congestive heart failure. But he was able to help 80 people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole other story in itself too. Like, that's a lot of people to benefit. And, we'll save this for another edition, but people always want to say too, like, well, you can't use any of my stuff. It's not going to be any good, or I'm not healthy. Bet. You know what? So it's like, no,
but look
you
at
can.
him.
Yep.
And that's the part that I love the most. And I had great trepidation about that. But I said, well, Kim, you do a show. You're always authentic. You're always being transparent. Just go for it. And the truth is, and he did smoke and he did drink, So he smoked for, probably over 40 years. And when he needed to have back surgery, they told him, if we can't do the surgery, if you are going to, first of all, you got to stop smoking. And then you have to make the commitment not to smoke ever again if you want to have this surgery. And he woke up one morning, was in so much pain. He never bought another pack of cigarettes again.
Wow. Didn't
faze him because he wanted that surgery. So when you look at everything that he had, he was 65. So he was doing it for a better of 40 years of his life. And he still was able to help that many people at the end of life.
Yeah.
To me, that there's no excuse.
Right.
There's no excuse.
He's a beautiful example of that.
And so the piece is going to be in Veterans Park, which I think is perfect because many veterans, they suffer from PTSD, been addicted to opiates or, alcohol. And to see that a fellow comrade, because my husband was in the Army, donated all of this, I think it'll, if
It'll be
nothing,
inspiring.
huh?
It's going to be inspiring for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I mean, folks, I keep reading it's there on the golm.org website. Dr. Kimberly posted the donatelife.net. If you're not in Michigan, even if you are in Michigan, you can go to donatelife.net. Think about it. If you're the praying type, pray about it. And
I sure had to.
we encourage you to add your name to the list.
Yeah, great.
Thank you all for your time today. Letting
All right,
us
all
share.
right.
We're excited. So this is only part one. Hopefully our schedule will open up because I have like a gabillion more questions that's been generated.
We got other myths to take down.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah. Stay tuned for part 2.
part 2.
All right, guys. And let us know what you like about our new theme song. Yeah. We'll play it one more time as we leave out.
Here we go.
Come on,
Harmony.
God, it's time.
Oh, yeah, let's go. Come on, it's time.
Yeah. We're rolling on the road with the doc. Rolling on the road
With Dave.
rolling on the road
With the doc.
100 shades of diversibility with Dave and Dr. Valentine.
Yeah, all right,
let's go.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next Tuesday.